Pernille, it's so nice to meet you. Listening to your music, wow, you're an amazing player. So thanks for being on the Everything Saxophone podcast.
Thanks. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, so Pernille is in Denmark right now, all right, and she's playing like all over the place. But you know what? So people may not know you, so I want them to get to know you. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? I'm always curious about how people got started in music. Okay, may not necessarily be on the saxophone, but you could have started on piano or something like that. But talk to us about your background.
Yeah, I'll try to do it short, if it's possible. I began on the recorder, when I was around 6 or 7 years old. And then I played for a couple of years and also got to play with other children. I learned to play and read, and then I changed for a short while to the clarinet when I was around 14. But I didn't really, it was not really me. And then I switched to the soprano saxophone, actually, because when I went to gymnasium, I heard a young guy playing on this soprano saxophone, and I was just so fascinated. I just needed to have that instrument.
Wow!
So actually, the first saxophone I had was a soprano, and it was quite a challenge. And I didn't have the best teachers to begin with, so it was kind of And I'm not from a family that play music, so I'm sort of the only one in the family doing this. So I have really had to figure out my own way through all this. And I bought my first tenor saxophone when I think I was 16 or something. And I still have that saxophone, but I'm playing on another one now. And I just kept on playing. And at a point I had a classical trained, very, very good classical saxophone player when I was young. But he told me that if I was going to study at the conservatory, the classical conservatory, I would have to change to the alto saxophone. And I was not interested in that. And I was much more into, being creative and figuring out playing my own lines and melodies and stuff. So I moved in that direction. And and learned more. And then when I was after the gymnasium, I went to a place we called it a sort of high school, but I don't know the expression in America, but it's a place you go to where you stay, you live there. And I lived there for half a year and studied all sort of stuff and a lot of music. I really played a lot, from morning to evening, and met a lot of other young people. And there I really got, the taste of music, and I heard Miles and Wayne Shorter, Weather Report, and a lot of stuff. And it just, made me so interested in just playing. Yeah.
Wow. So this is interesting because you really didn't get started on the saxophone till much later. And what's interesting, I was speaking with another podcast guest, and I had asked the question about, should people start on soprano saxophone? And he was saying, because he plays soprano saxophone classically, and he was saying that, if you have a really good teacher, and you have a solid foundation, yes. But, it's interesting in your case, that was the opposite. Yeah. So I'm curious, first of all, you played recorder for a number of years. That's interesting. I know when I grew up, in third grade, what are we, like 7, 8, something like that. We play recorder for a year, and then we play a band instrument or an orchestra instrument. And I didn't have a musical family either, at all. But so I could definitely relate to that. But I found it interesting though. So clarinet, and you played clarinet first, so that definitely helped with the soprano saxophone. But were you playing in a high school band or something like that? Because I'd be surprised if there's usually not parts written for soprano saxophone, like in a high school band. So did you just do it on your own? How did that work?
Yeah, how did that work? It was more like I was connected with different other young people on the gymnasium. They were older than me, and they had small groups where they played, and it was I guess it was, some of it was more like folk inspired music, but still with some improvisation going on, and I joined them, played with them. So I kind of learned it there, and then I was living, in the countryside. So I had a teacher that lived 20 kilometers away, and it was quite complicated to get there with the bus and at that point. And he was not the best teacher either, unfortunately. I mean, but I think I've been very, maybe very stubborn or very, but I've just continued and I mean, I had this basis, what do you call it? The base with the recorder, and knowing how to read music and play together with other people. I learned that from a very young age, and I think that's a very good thing that I had. And I could use that on my further travel with the music. When starting to play the saxophone. And I guess quite early I began, working with improvisation, but in different settings. It was not so much jazz to begin with, but it changed. Yeah,
that's interesting, because you're talking about let's see, so recorder, clarinet, but then in these small groups, where you met, it was more improvising along the lines of folk music and stuff. And again, gosh, we have a lot of similarities, because I did that with a church folk group on trumpet. Same thing. I had to make up my parts because there really weren't any. So okay, I get it. Now, what is a gymnasium? Like, what exactly is that?
That's the school you go to when you're from around 16 to 19 years old. So it's, I don't know what is that in US? It's almost like
high school. High school for us is like 14, 15
so.
How interesting. Okay.
So age there, that I was playing with others there, and I guess that's also what's happening in US,
okay, probably. So then, now that I understand that, so then in the gymnasium, in the school, was there a big band, like a big concert band that you were part of, or just these small little groups that you were talking about?
No, they didn't have a big band, but there was a jazz club. It was a very new school, so the teachers were very, very young, and there was a spirit of, we are inventing this new school, because everything was so new, and a lot of these young people, they gathered and they sort of started their own jazz club. So that was another point. So I heard music, it came to this little town, great music with great musicians, people playing in the Danish radio big band and other stuff. So I got to hear things and get inspired also by that. So there was a nice spirit of things going on, but not a big band. There was a choir. I was singing in a choir.
Okay. All right. That actually is very helpful too. And I had interviewed Michael Linkton probably a year or so ago, also from Denmark, and he was talking about the Danish. He was saying how there was only one radio station that he could get. But there was so much great music just on that one station. And when you mentioned what was it, the Danish National Orchestra or something? What was it again?
The Danish radio big band, connected to the Danish radio broadcasting. They have their own big band there. Yeah.
Yeah, he was talking a little bit about that too. So that's really interesting. So, all right. So then after, you graduated from gymnasium, then where did you go from there?
Yeah, then I went to this school for half a year where there was a lot of music I told you about. I lived there with other young people, and it was music was sort of the main subject. So I had theory, and I had piano lessons and saxophone lessons, and I played a lot. And I started in a group that was sort of very. We were young, and it was very weather report inspired music that the piano player, or the keyboard player, he wrote that music. So I played with that for a couple of years with other young people,
Wow,
and
cool.
we got to play on the Copenhagen Jazz Festival. Yeah, different
Oh,
places. Yeah,
wow. What were you mainly playing? Tenor?
yeah, tenor and soprano at that point. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so now I'm curious, again, with the late start with the saxophones and stuff like that, you mentioned your first teacher, he wasn't that great. Who was the teacher or the mentor, if anyone, that inspired you the most on the saxophone?
As a teacher or as inspiration, because I guess there are so many.
Oh, okay, let's say a
I had a
teacher.
very I went to the rhythmic conservatory in Copenhagen after this school for half a year, and then I continued studying when I returned to Copenhagen after that, and then I went to the rhythmic conservatory in Copenhagen, and there I had a very inspiring teacher, and he used to be the lead alto player in the Danish radio big band. I really liked him a lot because he was funny and inspiring, and he was very much into seeing the saxophone also as a very it's a very physical instrument. The whole way the body sound, it starts with your body. I mean, like if you're an opera singer or something, you really need to have this open sound and the airflow and all that stuff. So that was great, and he was just very inspiring. Also, his way to when we talk about how to improvise and have ideas, he had a very creative way of doing it, I think, because if you listen to a solo and there are phrases, you think, oh wow, man, I like that phrase, I take that phrase. We often do that. We take a phrase and we move it around in all keys and stuff, but he also liked to have this playfulness with the phrase. Try to change the rhythm in the phrase. Try to what do you call that? Change some of the notes in the phrase. Just see what happens with the melodic lines if you do. So you kind of get to own this phrase even more and have a flexible way of treating this phrase. So it's not just repeating the phrase that you have heard, or it's always this creative way of thinking. You can go in this direction. Oh, I can also try this, and it makes it sort of a playful way also to rehearse and practice these things, not just to repeat something and okay, I can do this, I can do that. The interesting stuff is being creative in the moment, also trying to figure, oh, I can go this way, no, I could also do like this, and I could change it from 16 notes to triplets, and that changes the whole phrase, the whole feeling of the phrase. And it's just very interesting, and I think that creative way of seeing things was extremely inspiring for me.
I think that's
Yeah.
awesome, and you just shared some great tips there for sure for a lot of people, because a lot of people have the thought that, okay, I'm just gonna steal that lick and then throw it into my solo, but we can do that and quote, you can quote somebody. I
Yeah.
mean, that's cool, but on the same token,
Well,
though, you just explained how to really own it.
yeah, and he had a very personal language, and I think it was because of that approach. Because if you turn things around, you switch them, you take. Of course, we steal a lot, we listen and we steal, but try to make it your own and give your own little stamp on it, and saying, okay, I know this one, but I changed it a bit, or because then you develop also your own more of your own personal language, and I
And
find that interesting. Yeah.
yeah, no, for sure. And I'm wondering if also, again, I just go back to those small little groups where you were improvising around folk music. Um, I'm tending to think that also helped with this experience too, because I'm wondering, like you had mentioned that you learned how to read and all that kind of thing. Um, but I'm going to make an assumption that with these small groups that helped you to develop your ears too.
Yeah. I think, that I began early to play with others also, this whole to relate to others, all and blend in and all that stuff you do, and the feeling. And there are so many elements when you suddenly start playing in a new group. You really need to listen on a lot of levels. I mean, it's both the sound and the blending, it's the time feel, it's the chords, and where are you in the chord, and this whole you have to really sense a lot. And I think you learn. I think in a way I have some. Yeah, I learned something. Get to listen also that I'm part of something always. I find it so interesting. Jazz is really complicated and super interesting. I think because we are acting and reacting in the same moment. I find that really fascinating, because I need to be aware of what I'm doing myself, and I need to react on what others are doing, and the presence. I need to be so much right here, right now. That's I mean, that's at least how I think about it. And also what I like the best. I mean, I'm not a person that learns. I'm not practicing solos to learn 5 courses in my head so I can just play them when I play a solo. I'm much into improvising on spot. What is going on? What happens here? And this openness, and it's also a bit dangerous sometimes, We take chances. But I find that there is a nerve, and that there is this presence, that it's now or never, and it's this moment.
Okay, there's so much to unpack here. Hold on a second. So you were saying that this is great. So you were saying that this could be dangerous. What do you mean by that?
No, I mean, it's taking chances, because you are out of control in some way. I mean, when you practice for yourself and you practice things under control in the practice rehearsal room, and you check out things and you do a lot of stuff to manage things and learn things, like you have a whole library of possibilities. But then when you stand on stage performing, I feel it's like you need to be in another stage, another mood. You need to let go of all this knowledge, all this theoretical stuff, and all this control, and you need to let go. You need to lose some of all this control to be in this moment and make maybe something very surprising happen. I mean, so you can also surprise yourself sometimes. And of course, it is to take a chance. It's you are there, and sometimes it just doesn't work that well. So that's what I mean. In that sense, it can be a little dangerous, because you throw yourself into this big ocean and
sink or swim.
Yeah, sink or swim. But I don't know. In a way, I think that's where the music really gets interesting, I guess, also.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, okay, so let me dig into this even more. In order to get to that state, in order to get to that exploratory state on stage when you're performing, can you talk about how what you do in the practice room in order to get there? Like, what are the things that you do to manage in the practice rooms? What types of things are you playing? Is there any particular exercise that your teacher, the lead alto sax teacher, taught you that you stick with you now, that you still do?
I think it's that creative approach to creating lines, thinking in lines, creating lines, exploring also while practicing. Of course, I practice, I do warm-up exercises, maybe with fifths, moving up and down, and checking my pitch, and the openness of the sound all over the horn. and of course, I have a lot of technical stuff that I like to do, so I feel like I can move around pretty smoothly.
Yeah.
So I'm ready, to play in the moment. Um, so that's what I do. If I have certain songs, repertoire I need to play, I might. Maybe I play to something on Spotify, or I make a recording, a backtrack. What do you call that? Backtrack recording.
Yeah.
So I have the whole form in my own tunes, for instance. I maybe do that, and then so play along with that. So I try to be creative on top of this specific form, so I get it in my body. So I just know where I am, and try out a lot of stuff on top when it comes to practicing improvising on certain stuff. And then I think it's also some sort of mental training. I mean, like doing, maybe it's some sort of yoga-like stuff to focus on relaxation. So you can be totally relaxed and totally open mentally to see what happens.
Oh, that's so interesting. You're the first person that actually kind of spoke about that. So what kind of things, you mean like breathing and stuff? Is that what you mean?
I mean, like, in certain periods, I do different things. One thing I've done is I took a course with a person who's called Anne Rosing Skov in Denmark. And she's a person that knows extremely much about the body, the physics of being singer. And she teaches opera singers and stuff like that. And I followed a course she had for horn players about how is it with this body and the airflow. What can we do? So I have certain exercises from her that I use continuously, that are exercises training your we call it support.
Oh yeah, okay.
The body support or the airflow. How do I breathe in a good way, so that so my body works the best possible to when playing. So I have exercises that I do there. And then I'm doing, I don't know if you know Wim Hof.
Yes.
Crazy guy, yeah.
Yes.
Let's say he's a special guy. But he has these exercises where you sort of hyperventilate, I call it in Danish, yeah. And so you sort of relax your nervous system by using your breath. And I love that. I love it because you get so grounded. Well,
now,
I love some,
with him though, hold on, with Wim Hof, WIMHOF, everybody look him up. We said crazy in a sense because he's
but
also
it's meant in a positive way.
Yes, absolutely. But if I remember right, doesn't he have exercises where you're also jumping into like freezing cold and stuff like that?
Oh,
and you do that too?
Yeah. I don't go into. I take a cold shower in the morning. I end my shower with the cold because I will. I like that as well. But I'm not into all this. I'm not deep diving or something.
Okay, yeah, I'm just cold thinking about that. But he's an expert on breathing actually, and he's been on many different podcasts. He probably has his own, but if you want to look him up, folks, you could look up Lewis Howes, and he's been on the School of Greatness a couple of times. But that was interesting that you mentioned him. Wow.
Because I think, when we play the saxophone, the first instrument is the body. So we need to be careful with our body. We need to try to be good friends with our body, because we all know that feeling when we're standing on stage and getting nervous and it closes here, or the breathing does not function because we get nervous. So it's just so important to be grounded and connected somehow. And I try to do that, and that makes it easier for me, I think, to be in that state mentally when I'm on stage. If I do these things, there is a certain when it works best, there is a certain calmness that I can take with me on stage. And also the feeling that I have to stay connected with the love for the music, the joy of the music. Because if it's something to do that I have to do this and that, I have to be so good, and I criticize myself all the time and stuff like that, then I'm on the wrong I'm on the wrong path. It just destroys everything. So I have to stay there where I feel the love for the music, and it's from there that I play. And what also helps is also thinking that I'm there with my group members. And just sometimes if if you get a little nervous, focus on what they are playing. Just enjoy what they are playing. And then you jump into the game. So I've thought a lot about that, actually. Maybe because I've also fought a lot with that. I mean, I've been struggling, I think, with it. So I've had to figure out how to do it the best way, because we can make so many blockages, is that the word, for ourselves. We can stop our creativity, the love for the music, the flow. It's so easy to stop.
Wow. Yeah, I love how you're speaking about this, and a lot of aha moments are coming up in my head right now, because the interesting thing, people think it's all like you mentioned. Okay, we have to be best friends with our body, absolutely, for sure. But a lot of people forget about the mental part, about the mindset part, and if your mind is in a different state, let's say in a different emotional state, it's really hard to make music. Especially my trumpet teacher used to say, you can't create and criticize at the same time.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. You need to judge. Go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what's interesting too, and I don't know if you feel this also, but I tend to think that the criticism component, I think, it's always strong, over the generations and stuff, but I think with the impact with social media, I think it can really creep in even more now, because everybody's, there's great things about social media, but also there's a lot of criticism that people put out there that, there's a lot more ways to get criticized. Let's just put it that way. And I think that can affect people's mental state when they're playing, whether it's practicing or performing. I don't know if you agree, if you feel like we're probably around the same age. So, if it's more now, if it's perceived more now than it was when like we were growing up or something.
It's all over the place. I mean, and you can compare yourself with everything all the time and get this impression that, oh, I'm not able to do anything, or I cannot manage this and that, and all others are successful except for me. I mean, it's very easy to have the focus out there, and that I guess that's another reason I think it's good to do this stuff with the breathing, and because you sort of, then you come home, you need to come home to yourself and live your life from here, from yourself and out, instead of all this. It's just so disturbing.
Yeah, it's disturbing, overwhelming, everything. And I it's so interesting too how I could see the trajectory of from your beginnings to now where you are with the exploration, like how the circumstances in your life led to, that feeling when you're on stage of exploring and stuff like that. I think that is so cool. I think that's really cool because, and one of the things I was going to ask you, and this goes, it goes a little bit away from exploration in a sense, but people are going to be curious about, you mentioned you got to keep your technique up. You practice these technical exercises. Are there any exercises in particular, any books, or is it just things that you make up? Like, what do you do to keep your technique up?
Yeah, I guess it's in here, most of it.
Okay, in your head. Okay.
I just because it's different stuff. Some of it, I return to stuff I have it can be some pentatonic stuff sometimes, and some chromatic stuff I use, and then quarter notes moving up and around, and eighth note, scales, different patterns that I like, and then I combine them. So it's stuff, and a lot of it is now in my head. I just have things that I like to do, to move around, of doing sixths, in each major scale, just sixth intervals, up down, whatever.
Yeah.
There are so many. I mean, you can figure out your own exercises, because there are so many possibilities.
That's right. That's true. It can be overwhelming for sure.
It can be very overwhelming. And also there, I guess, when you're practicing, it's also nice if you can try to think from the love to the music and out. So you also, when you practice these things, you keep the love for it, because otherwise then you could just be working with a lot of other stuff. If there's not this love for the music, well, then why?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you something, because you're busy performing, you're writing your own music. How much time do you have to practice, and how do you manage that?
Yeah, how do I manage that? That's a good question. Right now, in these days, I'm so busy with a lot of office work, a lot of mails, and I've been sending out CDs, and so I'm a little frustrated. I like to play a couple of hours each day, and then I have concerts, and then so I prefer to have at least a couple of hours to play each day, to be in contact with my instrument. But it's a complicated world, and it seems like the more we get this the digitalized world, the more it seems. I think there is more and more work that is not directly the music, but if I also I need to play some music, and I'm having a rehearsal, or I have meetings. I'm also working. I'm part of a composer society and stuff like that. So I also have political stuff that I do.
Wow.
And the time is running, But I really like to be in contact with my instrument.
That's great that you.
That's great. Otherwise, it makes no sense for me.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's great that you're able to make time to get a couple of hours in, and for you, as you're explaining it, it's a way to ground yourself.
Yeah, it's my language also. It's like the more years that pass, the more the connection with the saxophone is like I'm feeling a bit sad if I'm not playing.
Yeah. I get you. I get it. I hear you. I hear you on that one.
Yeah, but it's also hard to figure out in periods of time it's difficult, and I feel a bit frustrated, and other times there is more space to do it.
Did you find that during the pandemic? Did you have more time to practice at that point?
It was funny with this pandemic, because before it started, I had a feeling actually that I would like some sort of break,
Wow.
I needed some calmness in my life. So in a way, it was like, okay, maybe this is my sign. And now I calmed down a little, and I managed to. I think I managed to keep up I'm a good self-motivator, you might say. I have a good energy to get up in the morning and do stuff. And that's a great thing to have. Because otherwise maybe I would have gone crazy. But what I managed to do was I actually, just before the pandemic started in 2020, I was in the studio with my Septet, Radio Bevort, I call it, my own radio channel, and that's a Septet, and we made a recording in 2020, which is actually quite nice. We are 4 reed players, well, a flute on top, and then 3 reed players, and then rhythm section, and I write the music. And we managed to go to the studio just before, so I had something, I could work on. I could mix and master and send out this music in the world, and then also practice. And then I also went in the studio with my trio in August 2020. I took a day in the studio and recorded a studio album that was called On Fire. And both these 2 albums were DMA, Danish Music Awards Jazz nominated.
Awesome. That's great. Congratulations.
Each year, one in 2020 and the other one in 2021. So I sort of, I think I just got creative and did stuff, focused, like, okay.
Yeah. So, you just mentioned, so do you mix and master your own music?
No, I have actually, it's a wonderful woman living here in Copenhagen, and she has her own studio.
Oh, cool.
And I've worked with her for a long period of time. Actually, I've used her as technician to mix music, and she's the one I'm using the most. I've been in 2 studios. When it was the Septet, I was in another studio, a bigger studio that is called The Village. Very nice studio here in Copenhagen. Yeah, because they have a lot of space, and grand piano, and we had to be separate. I mean, we were 7 people, so yeah.
Oh, right. The distancing too. That, yeah. Okay, got it. And so wait, when you recorded that Septet, so you recorded, was it recorded, I'm going to say live, like recorded live in one shot, you all had to be separated away. That's hard. How do I want to?
It was, I mean, it was recorded live in studio. We were 3 reed players and a piano in one room. Oh. And then the drums and bass was separated, and the flute also, because of overhearing, the flute was nice to have separated. So of course we could correct something, but there was also a lot of stuff that was just as we played it, because we had 2 days in the studio, so it was like,
Got it. Okay. And I could also see that too, because just based on the little that I know about you, you like exploring and you want to capture that, that's what I'm thinking too. But I'm sure COVID made it that much harder though to record in a sense, because like you mentioned before, and I could totally understand this too, when you're on the stage, you're a team. It's not just you, and you want to, you're creating, but you're also reacting, and it's hard to react when you're separated from people.
But I mean, in the studio, we played together as, tried to play as though it was just on stage. And when I go in the studio, I have a way of doing it where I try to make this live feeling also be present. So maybe we take 2 or 3 shots on one piece, and then we move on, because I don't want us to get exhausted in one tune that then we try to catch the moment, and then we move on, and maybe we return to something if you like. But I think it's very important that we don't kind of kill the music. And because the more there can be a tendency, the more that you play this same tune, it becomes more and more complicated in your head when you're standing there in the studio, and you need to try to also try to be as relaxed as possible, so you can follow the flow. So
absolutely. You don't want to be after a while you start to overthink and you start to
exactly
second guess yourself, and it's just better to move on.
And things become stiff. You can feel it in the time, in the rhythm feel, and then the phrasing and everything. It all becomes so. Yeah,
for sure. Okay, all right, cool. Now, so you recorded the Septet. And then
Yeah.
also the trio though. So like your approach to playing, like you've got, and we're going to talk about big bands because you play in a lot of big bands too, right? So all these
Yeah.
different types of situations, but how do you, I guess the approach from a septet to a trio and your role, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. In the trio, of course, I can have a much more focus as a soloist. I'm carrying much more in the music all the time, both the melody and the main soloist and all that stuff. So it's really depending on me. And the way you arrange the music in a trio is, of course, different from the way you arrange it when it's a septet. What I really like to,
Yeah.
with my septet, I'm also exploring how to write for this sound with the flute on top. And then we are three reed players that double. So I have a lot of different sounds and textures going on that I like to explore. And I also like to explore layers of lines, I might say. Like we have different layers of lines move intertwined. Sometimes we are together, sometimes we are not. Trying to explore all that sort of stuff. So of course in the septet as a composer I have other possibilities. Like a painter, you can paint something else, and I really love this septet, but it's also hard economically. It's more difficult to come out and play concerts, and that's a pity, I think. I
Yeah.
really love to write for this septet because I have as a composer, I have more possibilities. And there I also give space for the people I have in the band. Of course, I know their voice and what can they add here and there. So I'm not the main soloist all the time. I do take quite some solos, but I also give space for the other ones so that they feel it should be we should all be there with our voices and color the music. So it's two different ensembles, but I also try to see it as part of the same whole way in my music. So some of the tunes I have both in a trio setting and in another arrangement for the septet. So they have different flavors, or
But
different
you're
ways.
But it's interesting though. I'm thinking that your approach in a sense, you mentioned like creating different lines like a painter and stuff.
Mhm.
And I keep in my head, I keep getting this image of you, when you're playing and I can hear it, you're exploring, and it's like you're putting your exploring self in different situations in a trio. And then also you're exploring, but you're allowing these other winds to also explore as well. So you're thinking more linearly, lines as opposed to like chords. I mean, yes, you're paying attention to the chords and
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
but I think it's more lines, right?
Yeah, and I think often the lines win over the chords, I guess, also in people's ear. When you hear a strong melodic line, you can play on top of anything almost. I mean, if it's really strong, you can get away with a lot of stuff. Yeah. So I guess, yeah, and because also there is this movement, this forward movement in a line. I like to think like that because of course it's a combination, but if you think too much down in each chord, it's like stop, 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 instead of and then heading somewhere. I mean, if you have some sort of direction in those lines you play, again, then you can really play a lot of strange stuff also sometimes that would sound amazing because if there is a direction and a good time sense in the lines also.
Yeah, so in a sense, what you're also kind of saying too, I mean, yes, there's the chord progression underneath, and that will inform, many of your note choices, but not all of them, because it's really where you're starting out and where that leads you. And
Yeah,
sometimes it's going to clash, sometimes it's going to
yeah,
sound strange, but then, it goes somewhere, and that's
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah. And that's improvisation. That's what it is. So, and then what's interesting though, like you're saying with the septet and with the trio, mentally your approach really is the same. You have a different role in the septet than you do in the trio, but still it's the same. It's the same approach. But you have definitely more responsibility in the trio. And what I'm curious about, your trio is you, bass, and drums. And for people that are curious about, gosh, I mean, how can you play in a trio? Don't you need like a guitar or a piano or something to, outline the chords and stuff like that? Like, what's your approach when it comes to trios and stuff like that? And just trying to fill up, yes, you're thinking lines, but, we also have to fill up the harmony and stuff like that.
Yeah, but and then again, the lines become so important, I guess, to communicate what is going on musically, because you imply the chords in the way you're playing. I mean, and then again, it's more open because you don't have the piano, so you can also take some what do you call that, excursions?
Okay.
and take some, do something else. But of course, there is a, but I think in a way there is, there are these lines that also sort of carry us through this without the chords, and the trio is also a classic within jazz in a way, So, and I just felt like having that as opposed to the septet that has another sound, and I like that. I like that trio setting, and I liked very much to play with my two musicians, Morten Ankerfeldt on the bass and Esben Laub van Liljenskjold on drums. We played together for several years now, so we also know each other. This playfulness you can have in a very little setting, because we can read each other and move around and change in the arrangement on spot, and
Let me ask you something. Who I mentioned before, like who were your influences, your mentors, like teachers, but what I didn't get into, and you were kind of alluding to it as well, who are your inspirations? I kind of have a little bit of an idea, but I want to, obviously hear it from you. Like, who inspired you, especially when it comes to trio playing, when it comes to septet, and just improvisation in general?
I mean, I've had several several things that I listened to. That when I was young, I told you about this weather report period of time where I listened to Wayne Shorter, of course, and his soprano saxophone also. And I also, there was actually also quite a while where I listened to some old stuff of Art Pepper, and then I listened to John Coltrane, Lush Life, and the ballads, and where he was a little more lyrical maybe than he became later on. And then Saxophone Colossus with Sonny Rollins, for instance.
I thought Sonny Rollins. Okay,
yep. Yeah, I love that one. And then I've listened, to Joe Henderson. Oh, Joe Henderson trio stuff. I love that. And Joe Lovano and Chris Potter. Mm-hmm. And then there are also some Danish saxophone players that I have liked to listen to, and one of them I play with now in a big band, a 13-piece band that is called Maluba Orchestra, where we have Marilyn Masur, the percussionist that plays. She used to play with Miles Davis and also Wayne Shorter and Jan Garbarek, actually. She has this band together with a saxophone player called Frederik Lundin, very personal Nordic, whatever that is, but a very personal language. I really love his playing too, so he is also worth digging into. so I tried to pick up inspirations from different people.
Yeah, so that okay, I'm glad you went into the big band because that was going to be another area I wanted to get into as well.
Yeah.
So, and I was thinking Sonny Rollins too, by the way, but I was
Thank you.
especially yeah, absolutely. And so like okay, now big band approach your approach is going to be different obviously because it's even more everybody's got their own parts so to speak, but when you're soloing, I mean you're still bringing your lines, your improvisation approach to that. But yeah, let's talk about the big bands. You play in a lot of big bands, and are there any tips that you could provide for people when you're soloing in a big band? You don't have as long as you want to create, and that I'm wondering if that's challenging for you because you like to explore, and that really, it's like a time constraint, so to speak. So how do you handle that, and what tips can you give for people?
Oh, that's a difficult one because you're so right. Sometimes you only have 16 bars, so you cannot. I mean, it's another thing. It's not like standing in the trio having a lot of communication going on. You need to be more directly into it, bath. And then again, you also need to listen what kind of stylistic stuff is it? Is it some samba or is it a more bluesy stuff or whatever? Again, you need to use all that you have, all your experience to make it fit into that in a way, at least in another way. So that's what I try to do. I try to be more
Get to it quicker. Yeah, to basically just get to it quicker.
Anyway, yeah, and still have all this other stuff with me, and also maybe I probably also insist on having a personal voice because I cannot help it. It's like I mean I need to play as I play also.
Yeah, can you talk about that personal voice? You mentioned that with the other saxophone player, but like how does one find their own personal voice?
You work and you work and then you work some more. And you don't stop. Even though you try to stop, you don't stop. I think you work with all these elements we also talked about, your body, your approach to the airflow, and then of course you also I mean, it takes years and years with the saxophone. We know that when we have taught beginners, it can sound so, I'm sorry, so awful.
No, it's true.
And it really takes a long time to manage to get a good sound out of a saxophone. It's easy to get a sound, but to get a good controlled sound that you can shape and that is nice, and it takes years, and you do a lot of experiments with your setup, with your way of playing, and I mean it's whoa, I don't know. And then you work with that. You need to work so that you get a sound that you like when you hear it when you play. So you think, so you can close your eyes, and on the good day you think, yeah, I like this sound. I like this. This is my voice. I like this. And it's not too much resistance. You need to get something back when you put something into the horn. Don't make it too complicated for you. Not too much all this hard reeds and all this stuff. You don't need that to have a big sound. You don't need hard reeds and big mouthpieces. You need to have this body that body airflow going on, and then you can have a little mouthpiece sounding like whoa. So and it takes years and years, and then you also work with, as I talked, at least that's my approach, trying to always try to create also your own lines, shape others' lines so you make them your own, and yeah.
Yeah.
So that becomes part of your voice, of your, yeah, your musical voice here.
Yeah, okay,
And
this is great. Let me go off of what you just said. I'm going to unpack some of this. So, everything absolutely fitting in. Like you're talking about the breath support. The body support. That's going
mhm.
to that actually that honestly helps with your personal voice and your sound and all that kind of thing. We're going to talk about equipment in a second. That's going to be like my next question, but it's also all the other elements as well.
Yeah.
A lot of people, are going to be curious about like what do you use? Like, what's your equipment? What do you play on for tenor? What do you play on for soprano?
Yeah, I'm playing on a Selma super balanced action tenor
Oh,
saxophone silver, and it's
oh,
from 49, so it's an old lady with
wow,
some small, strange stuff. But I have, I've
wow.
I've had it fixed, and I use actually another neck. I use a Selma Mark 6 neck that I have that I think produces some more free sounding. Yeah, free sound. And I've played on that saxophone for 20 years, I think.
Wow.
So I've grown accustomed to.
Yeah.
And I'm not a person that changes a lot, I more try to, yeah, connect with what I have. And then I play on a Morgan mouthpiece. It's a Jazz 7 medium large Morgan that I actually like very much, and I have also played on that mouthpiece for I don't remember how many years, but quite some years, yeah.
Wow.
And what was I used the Dario Select Jazz 3 soft on that mouthpiece, yeah. And I think it really works nice. I can use a lot of my reeds, and I don't have, yeah, I don't have so much trouble with finding reeds.
Oh, that's great. That's great. No, that's good. This is, again, a lot of people are curious, and when they hear your big sound, so now, they're going to have, an idea with this. Now, what about on the soprano? What's your setup for that?
That's a Selma Series 3. It's probably also 20 years old. I don't know. I don't quite remember. And it's a Selma E mouthpiece
Oh, okay.
uh, from the 80s, I think. Yeah, I just like that. Um, and it's Fandorn, the blue ones, and it's only 2.5 I use in yeah, the reach. And on both those mouthpieces, I use Marchand ligature. Marchand makes ligatures for Morgan mouthpieces.
I see.
So I
Okay.
bought some, yeah, and I like them. Yeah. So that's my equipment right now. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great because the thing is that for you, the approach to sound is from the body. That's what it sounds like to me.
Mhm.
And you found equipment that didn't get in your way,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
so you can
I like
create.
to feel that it is some sort of open sound. There is this balance you need to have, of course. There needs to be some resistance that you play up against, but it also comes from your body, the way you sustain your air, the way you do that also creates some sort of resistance, so that the airflow always stand there powerful behind the tone production. Or yeah, I don't know how to explain.
No, that's
But
exactly it. It's breath support. I mean, we call it breath support, and you're explaining exactly
yeah,
what breath support is.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
great. Yeah, so okay, great. So now we talked about like, tone and you mentioned some of the people that inspired you musically and I'm sure also tone-wise as well. You spoke about like John Coltrane, like Lush Life, the more lyrical John
Yeah.
Coltrane and
Yeah.
Joe Henderson and Sonny Rollins, Saxophone Colossus and all that kind of thing. When it comes to composing, are those your same influences, Wayne Shorter maybe so much, or are there other influences that you have for composing?
Again, yeah, for composing, I think I draw from a lot of different stuff. Actually, I both draw from the jazz, but also I try to draw a bit when I write for bigger ensembles, at least my septet and other stuff, more experimental. I also try to draw from more classical music and other sort of traditions. And I've also listened, to Django Bates. And I was on tour with this Bohuslän big band with Maria Snyder in 2017. Yeah, 17. Yeah. Language confusion. So her music is also lyrical, beautiful, fantastic, inspiring also. So I try to listen to different stuff. Also, this other Danish saxophone player I mentioned, Frederik Lundin, writes wonderful music that I like, that has also sort of Nordic dark flavor sometimes. So I try to take from different things. At a point I followed a course at the university in Copenhagen where we studied the 20th century classical composers and principles for their way of composing, and it's just so interesting. So I try to make my own melting pot of stuff. Yeah, but you don't hear that so much in the trio, of course, because that's the little setting.
Right,
but
right.
Right now I'm writing something for the Norrbotten big band in Luleå, Sweden, up north. They asked me to write a new piece for a celebration concert it's in October. So, and there I really try to think, in lines and chords and going crossing the different sections, and how can I make it sound interesting. I haven't written a lot for big band, but I find it challenging and interesting, and I really try to do good work there.
Yeah, no, this is great, because this is going to lead to my next question. Like, what are some things coming up for you? I was just about to say in 2021. No, we're in 2022. So, oh man.
I know the feeling, yeah.
Yikes. Yeah, so you're writing this big band piece. That's great. And what else is coming up for you this year?
What is coming up is that I was selected together with 3 other bands. I'm going to JASA in Germany in April. We are going with my trio to present Danish jazz on a club stage there. It's this what do we call that? Messe, we say in Danish.
Okay.
But it's a place where a lot of people meet, a lot of people from the jazz.
Like a festival, yeah.
Groupers and yeah. And it's in Bremen, Germany, in the end of April. So we are going there to perform. I know we are having some concerts, and then I'm releasing this live CD that the one Alette sent you something about. That live CD is sort of a follow-up to our studio recording. We made the studio recording, August 2020, the one I called On Fire.
Yes.
And this is sort of a follow-up that is recorded on stage in Montmartre and Skuespilhuset in Copenhagen. So I'm doing some PR work, And then another thing I'm having in the pipeline is a very special production, which is a solo project, really something completely different, where I have, I've made the music layers of reed instruments and real sound, recordings and strange stuff, fragments of soundscapes and voice and words. And it is going to be printed on vinyl and it's going to be made as unica. So each vinyl is unique.
Wow.
On the yeah, and they are numbered and only released in a very little. What do you call that? Only 200 or 300 pieces. And the photos of houses that are falling apart, and it's
Wow.
it's like an art project, yeah. And
Wow. That's really
so
cool.
that's really it will be something special. So it's more like soundscape, strange things, sounds of water combined with me playing all these reeds. Trumpets underwater, and yeah.
Wow. And I'm curious, would Joe Lovano have some kind of like influence over that? Meaning that like you're listening
Did he
to
make something like that? I haven't heard it. I played with it's not a long time ago. I was on this summer session with he made this duo recording with the female piano player, experimental. Oh, wow. What was the name?
It always happens. The reason why I said Joe Lovano because
it's funny that you ask about that, because what did he make?
Yeah, because I remember seeing Joe Lovano in New York Park, and it was I don't remember if it was a quintet, but I know he had a female vocalist, and she wasn't singing lyrics per se, but like different sound shapes. And it just, that's why I was just thinking about that. You mentioned Joe Lovano before, but I'm thinking that part of that could be coming in to this project, subconsciously,
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I've already made one vinyl also with this concept. So this is a follow-up to that.
Oh, cool.
And it is this, then I play all these reed instruments myself, and just really mix a lot of different stuff. And it's a bit strange, some of it, but I like these really, and it's something totally different, because I'm not thinking that I should perform it on stage. It's more like an artwork, in itself, like a statement here. Yeah, it's there.
Yeah, no, for sure. So now let me ask you, where can people purchase this? Would it be on your website? Where would it be?
It would be through Gateway Music, is it called? It's a Danish label. So it's Gateway Music. They have all my stuff there. Yeah. I'm also very easy to find if you Google my name. I don't think there are any. I don't know if there are any Pernille Bevorts in the world other than me, but not many. So that's a nice thing. But I'll make sure you get the link. And this vinyl will be released after summer, I think. Yeah.
Great, because I'll put that link. I'll put the link to your website in the show notes for this episode. And are you on Facebook? Are you on Instagram? Are you on Twitter?
Yeah, I'll give you the links also for that.
Terrific. Yeah. Great. We'll put those links, folks, in the show notes. Listen, Pernille, this was awesome. This was great. You seriously, because I can, like I mentioned before, I could see the trajectory of how you first started and how it's shaped you. Really, how it shaped you, and that's so cool. And these upcoming projects sound so interesting. And like I mentioned, I love the way you play, and you have a big sound, and I think it's going to be great for more people to know about you. So thank you so much for being here on the Everything Saxophone podcast.
Yeah, can I mention one little thing that is kind of funny? That I played with the Danish radio big band when they had a project with Charlie Watts. From Stones, the drummer. So there is a live recording from the Danish radio's concert hall from 2010. It's released on Universal, I think. The Danish radio big band with Charlie Watts. And there it's also possible to hear me on long soprano saxophone. So on You Can't Always Get What You Want. And it
Oh,
was just
that's really
recorded live, and with Charlie Watts. That was a funny project. With Jared Presenser, he was the trumpet player that had the contact with Charlie Watts in the Danish radio big band, and I was just a substitute. I was just someone got ill, and then I was a substitute, and then suddenly I was there.
wow, that's so cool. We're gonna have to look for the link for that and put that in the show notes as well. Oh, that's so
I can do
cool.
that. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I'm gonna be very curious to hear that. That's awesome.
Yeah,
All right, well, listen, Pernille, thanks so much for your time. This was great.
yeah, it was very nice.